Our dear Heavenly Father, so very thankful for all your many wonderful blessings this day. We're thankful for this time that we can have this class, that we can look into into your Word about the Old Testament and the teachings that are there, and that we can learn valuable lessons from your Word. In Jesus' name, Amen. Yeah. Before I forget, for the one another class on Sunday afternoon, the class material is over there on the table, so you can pick that up for Sunday afternoon. For tonight, we have 2 Kings chapter 12 and 2 Chronicles chapter 24 for our lessons tonight. So we have, we'll go over some of the names for that are in our lesson today. I looked up some of the names. In our lesson today, we have the king of Judah who was saved by this woman, Jehosheba, and her name means Yahweh has sworn. She saved him as a baby, saved the king with the help of Jehoiada, the priest, and his name means Yahweh knows. And Joash's mother, Zibiah, is a lot of times the woman's names is kind of a bad name, means something bad. In this case, though, her name means gazelle, symbolizing beauty, grace, and swiftness. And then in Chronicles, they have the king's name Joash, meaning Yahweh has given, but in Kings, Jehoash, meaning Yahweh is strong. Two different versions give you two different names for the king, okay, for Joash or Jehoash. And then it mentions one of the villains, Athaliah, and wouldn't you know, her name means something special. It means Yahweh is exalted for the evil queen in the story. And then Zechariah is mentioned in the story. Yahweh remembers. And then some of the, I don't know if you call them good guys or bad guys, because they kind of do a good thing, but then it's not a good thing in a way. One guy, Zabad, his name means gift, and then Jehozabad, Yahweh has bestowed, and then Joash's son, his heir, Amaziah, the strength of the Lord, kind of almost the same meaning as Jehoash. Yahweh is strong, and Amaziah, the strength of the Lord. Kind of the same meaning for Jehoash and Amaziah. Same thing. So that's some of the names in the story here of what we're going through. So we get to the story. Not that one. That one. So we get to the story in 2 Kings 12 and 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles chapter 24 gives kind of more details as we've seen. When you go to the kings of Judah, you go to Chronicles and you get more details in the stories, especially about the kings of Judah. In 2 Chronicles chapter 24 and verse 2, it tells us, gives a kind of little synopsis of how this king, what he did during his reign. And it tells us what he did in his reign in a summary. How did he do as a king? What does it say that Joash did as a king? Is that Cindy?
It said that he did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest.
All the days of Jehoiada. Okay, so that kind of gives it a qualifier. It said he was a good king as long as he was under the influence of Jehoiada the priest.
And just to put it in context, he was there right when he was made king as like an advisor.
Yeah. So, in the whole context of everything, Jehoiada the priest kind of saved him when he was a baby, and then made him king, and then instructed him. And so it's kind of like he has a big, big influence in this whole story, see, and everything that goes. So then now that we get into, what he did particularly when Joash was king. So we get into the story. What did Joash command the Levites and the priests? And this is kind of the main part of the story here as to what this king actually did. What's his accomplishments? Okay, Pam?
He says he had to go into the city of Judah and gather all of Israel money to repair the house of God.
Okay, now this is his big thing. This is what he's known for, this king. So he says, "Go, you Levites and priests. I want you to go and get some taxes, some money, and I want you to repair the temple, because before Joash there was this evil queen, Athaliah, and she had taken the temple and ruined it. Okay? And she had used it for evil purposes. So now the temple needed to be repaired. And that was Joash's job. He said, we have a job to do. We have to repair the temple, and we need taxes to do this, and we need money from the people. So he gave this commission to the Levites and priests. He says, go out into Judah, and you get money from the people. But this was a specific thing, see? In Exodus 30, 1 through 16, and in Leviticus 26, 30 through 32, what specific taxes is he talking about here? Because this is a specific thing. What's he telling them to go get? There's two things, and then there's another thing. There's like three things he's saying you would need to go get for this, for the Levites to go get.
One of them was the yearly tax of all the males.
Yeah, that was Exodus 30, verses 11 through 16. Moses says, every year there's going to be a numbering of the number of the people, and there's going to be half a shekel for each male. And that's going to be brought in for each year. That was a yearly thing. Okay? And that's one thing. And the other one was Leviticus 27, 30 through 32 was what? That was according to how much each person, kind of prospered each year. What was that? That was their tithe. That was their tithe. So they were going to bring in the half shekel for each male, the tithe, and then the third thing was the temple was in disrepair. This first one was actually called the temple tax. Okay? The second one was the tithe. But then Joash says, since the temple is in such disrepair, I'd like for you to bring in extra money that people would donate for the temple. So he says, go out and collect these three things. The temple tax, which was according to every male, the tithe, and then this kind of offering, this donation, so that we can repair the temple. Okay? So he said, go out and collect that. And then it says, in the 23rd year, it doesn't say when they began collecting Okay? It doesn't tell us when he started this, so we don't know when he initiated, telling them to go out. So we don't know if they started 5 years before that, or how many years it was that they were supposed to go out and collect. Okay, this is a yearly thing. So then in the 23rd year, he says, okay, how come you haven't been repairing the temple? I know you've been going out and getting this money. No repairs are being done. Okay? So they weren't doing any repairs. And he says, okay, we got to stop this. This is not getting done. Okay? So this way doesn't work. Okay? You guys going out, getting the money, and coming in and taking the money and repairing the temple. It's not getting done. All right? So, what did they do to make getting the money easier? What did they do? Okay, so they said we're going to take a big chest, okay, and then Jehoiada said, I'll just put a hole in the top of this chest, and then when the people come, we'll make a big proclamation for all the land of Judah, saying, we need to repair the temple. So, let's make this proclamation. And what happened? The people responded. They rejoiced and they came and they started putting money in this big chest. And they got lots and lots and lots and lots of money.
It's kind of interesting that whenever you force people to give money, then people resent it. But when they made it a free will offering, then people came and brought. And it's still that way. That's what kind of God put in the church. We give on the first day of the week.
So, did this start a new tradition? What do we see Jesus doing in Mark chapter 12 and verse 41? What do we see there in Mark? Pam?
He was sitting there by the treasury and he saw how many people put a lot of money in it, but then he saw this widow with 2 mites in it.
So, we see that this tradition lasted up until the time of Jesus. That Jesus sits down in the temple and he sits there opposite this collection box where people come and bring their tithes and their temple tax and their free will offerings. It was such a great idea, started here by Joash and Jehoiada, that it continued on from this time forward. What a great idea. That instead of going out and saying, it's time for you guys to pay your tax, they said, if you guys want this temple to be repaired, we're going to put this box here, so bring your money. And everybody thought it was a wonderful idea. And it was great.
And that's kind of the way it went originally when they were building the tabernacle. They said, hey, we're going to build this tabernacle for God. And then remember, they had too much. They had to say stop because they had in excess.
Exactly.
And when you get people on board with something like this, hey, we're going to repair the temple, of course, they're going to come and do that.
Exactly right. That's exactly the example that happened. What you're saying is when they were building the tabernacle, the people just said, what a wonderful thing, when they just loaded them up with money and materials to build the tabernacle. The same thing happened here with Jehoiada and Joash. The people willingly came and gave them tons and tons of money to rebuild the temple, or repair the temple. And that's what happened. So, this is what Joash and Jehoiada, what their major accomplishment was. So they started to repair the temple. And that started this new tradition. Okay? And the people, they rejoiced and they brought tons and tons of money. And it tells us in particular what they did with this money. Okay? And let's point out some of the things they did. What did they do? What does it say they did with this money? When they had all this money, tons and tons of money came in. What did they actually do, Lamarck?
They used part of it to compensate the workers.
They had these workers here. It lists these workers. They had carpenters, stonemasons, and people who worked in metal. And it said that they gave them the money, but it says a particular thing about how they gave them the money. Okay? They gave them money in such a way. What particular way did they give them the money? Okay?
They didn't keep up with what they did with it.
Okay. See, what they did, what Bill's saying, and what it says here in the scriptures, is that they didn't have a person who had an accounts over them, like an accountant. Okay, he says, okay, now we've given you guys 600 shekels, and you must give account for everything we give you. No, nothing like that. They just gave them the money and said, here you go, guys. We know you're honest. Do your best. Okay? They counted on their honesty, and they were honest, and they did their best. They did the work according to what they were given, and they did what they were supposed to do.
And then in verse 14, it says they had left over that they didn't spend, and they brought that back.
Right.
And, that shows the gratitude too.
Right.
I guess I just want to bring up one more example of the difference between giving freely of our hearts. Did anybody pay extra on their taxes last year? There's your example of what happened here.
All right. See, that's a good point. I mean, this was people who gave extra. That's special. That's really special. Okay.
I've heard of congregations doing that today, that they don't pass a plate around or anything. There's just a box there in the back that everyone can put what they're going to give.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so this is what the thing that made Joash and Jehoiada. This was the thing that they're noted for here in the scriptures, okay? That they had this box here, and the people came and they gave freely, and they rejoiced, just like Tom said, as when they were making the tabernacle. They rejoiced over their generosity and that they could partake in this work. Okay, they rejoiced in it. Okay, that's that. Okay, so then. What did they do then it says, what did they do in the temple all the days of the priest Jehoiada? What's it saying about Jehoiada? It's talking about him now. After they repaired the temple, what are they doing all the days of Jehoiada?
It says they offered burnt offerings in the house of the Lord continually all the days.
Okay, so that says something special about Jehoiada, doesn't it? Okay, so Jehoiada, he helps with this restoration and repair of the temple so that they are able to start and continue this sacrifice that they're supposed to do every day in the temple. It says something very special. How had Jehoiada saved Joash? How had he done that? Let's talk about Jehoiada. What had he done for Joash?
I believe he hit him along with some others when he was a baby.
And he hit him where? In the temple. Okay? So Jehoiada had made sure that Joash was safe in the temple. Had made sure that there was guards over him. Okay? Had made sure that he was safe in the temple, had made him king when he was, 7 years old? 7 years old. So he did that, and he saved Joash when he was a baby. In that way, he ensured that the lineage of David continued. That's a pretty important thing, isn't it? Pretty important thing. how had Jehoiada helped the king when he was ruling as king? What did he do for him? Pam?
He taught him the whole time he was king, because he was a king at 7 years old, so he helped him be king and he instructed him.
Right. Okay, so Jehoiada was kind of essential, for King Joash.
He got him wives.
Yes.
He got him 2 wives.
It said that Jehoiada got him 2 wives. So is that essential for him, for the king?
Yeah. You can't have little kids.
I think one wife is essential.
Right?
Two was the way that's here because of the line of David. He said that.
It's essential because he's in the lineage of David. What had happened previous just with Athaliah?
She killed off all her relatives.
Killed off all the sons for the lineage of David. So, do you think maybe that Jehoiada is thinking of that when he gets him 2 wives?
And I'm sure they weren't Canaanite or Moabite, or they were probably Jewish wives.
Right. So I think Jehoiada is thinking about the lineage to continue for the line of David, okay? That he's thinking of that because just previous, the evil queen Athaliah tried to wipe out the whole lineage of David, and they stayed. The only reason he didn't is that they saved Joash. Okay?
It does seem, though, that if God is strong enough to conquer 3 armies for Jehoshaphat and stop Athaliah from killing Joash, he also would be strong enough to be able to give Joash a son with just 1 wife.
Yeah. But you got to remember, they're thinking we have to do something. Okay? They're thinking of them. So because Jehoiada had done all this, what was done for Jehoiada because of his service to God? Let's read this in 2 Chronicles 24 and verse 16. We got to read that because this has to be read for him. 2 Chronicles 24 and verse 16. Because he was a very faithful servant of God. Who wants to read that? 2 Chronicles 24 verse 16. Pam? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's, verse 16.
They buried him in the city of David among the kings, because he had done well in Israel and to God and to his house.
Okay. So it makes a special reference to Jehoiada and tells them something that they did for him. What did they do for him? Go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure that it means anything in particular, but that 130 age, before the flood, people were 800-900 years old. Afterwards, it went steadily down, until it got down to about David's age, which is about 70. And so then, I don't know how many centuries passed here, all of a sudden it spikes up for Jehoiada. I don't know why.
I think it's because so he could do all this. So he could do that. Because we're going to see the reason why in just a second. So Jehoiada, is buried among the kings. Is that an honor?
Yes.
A great honor? I mean, it says that he's just a priest. It doesn't say he's the high priest. It says he's a priest. Okay? Just a priest.
Yeah, I was also going back to being 130. If you just put the numbers together, we know that Joash reigned for 40 years. He was 7 when he became king, so it doesn't say exactly, but he would have had to been at minimum 85, probably 90 or more when he saved Joash in the first place. So it certainly seems like God, gave him extra life because, like you said, people weren't living that long.
Right. It shows us that God needed him to do all this. It shows us the wisdom of God, that God knows what's going on, and that God knows that Joash doesn't have a faithful heart. That God knows that he needs Jehoiada beside Joash, okay, for this purpose, okay? Because he knows what's going to happen when Jehoiada is gone. And we'll see right now. Okay, so he gets a great, great honor for what he's done. He's buried with the kings of Judah. Okay, great honor. So then, as soon as Jehoiada is gone, who came to see Joash after the death of Jehoiada? Who comes to see him? What's it say? Oh, Cindy?
Hazael, the king of Aram.
Well, not yet. But there's someone comes to see Joash after the death of Jehoiada.
It says the officials of Judah came and
Okay.
bowed down to the king.
Okay.
And the king listened to them.
Okay, so in my way of thinking, when it says that, they came to flatter the king. Okay? That was their intention. We're going to bow down to the king, and we will flatter the king. Okay? It says there that the princes of Judah came to pay homage to the king, and the king listened to them. And he listened to them. Who had he been listening to before? Jehoiada, the priest. Now, okay, he's listening to the princes of Judah. Okay? He's listening to the nobles, the officials of Judah. Okay? And they're flattering the king, King Joash. What did they tell the king, and what did Joash do? What were they telling him? Okay? Just think about it. You know what they're telling him by what he did later, what he did afterward. Go ahead.
They must have been telling him about the worship of the Asherah poles and all of that, and what can we have those in our provinces?
Yeah. So it just goes back to Deuteronomy and the warnings that Moses gave to the people. He says, don't listen to them when they come and tell you, let us go and worship false gods. That's what they're going to tell King Joash. Let's go and worship false gods. Let's go and worship the Baals and the Asherah. That's what they're telling Joash to do. And he listened to them. He listened to them, and he did that. It says he abandoned God. He abandoned God because now he's listening to the officials, the princes of Judah. Okay? So now that Jehoiada's gone, now we know why Jehoiada lived to 130 years. Because God needed him to be there, to guide Joash. Because as soon as Jehoiada is gone, now these officials came and said, let us go and worship false gods. And he did. He did go and worship false. He went to go and worship the Baals and the Asherah and idols. And he forsook God. Okay? And it says that after this, when he had forsaken God, God sent who? He sent prophets. He didn't send just one. He sent a lot of prophets to Judah and to Joash. And it says now, and then it says Zechariah. And Zechariah means God remembers. Telling Joash, remember. Remember what you've learned. Remember God. And so Zechariah comes, and we have to read this too, because this is wonderful what it says. Who wants to read that in verse 2 Chronicles 24 verses 20 through 22? Go ahead, Pam.
It says, then the Spirit of God came over Zechariah the son of Jehoiada, the priest who stood above the people, and said to them, thus says God, why have you transgressed the commandments of the Lord, so that you cannot prosper? Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has forsaken you. So they conspired against him, and they commanded the king to stone him with stones in the court of the house of the Lord. Thus Joash the king did not remember the kindness which Jehoiada his father had done for him, but he killed his son as he died, and he said, the Lord look on it and repay.
Right. So here's Zechariah, a little rendering of that, and says, why have you forsaken the Lord? If you've forsaken him, he will forsake you. Why have you transgressed his commandments? And, you know, whose son is Zechariah? Jehoiada's son. Okay? Jehoiada's son. And what does the king command? To stone Zechariah, Jehoiada's son. Okay? Okay? And so I can't pass this up. In Mark 23, verses 29 through 36, you can't pass this up. In Matthew 23, Matthew 23, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and he's talking to them, and he tells them that they're hypocrites. And then at the end of him talking to them about them being hypocrites, he says, woe to you, scribes, in verse 29, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs. And there's so much about tombs in this lesson. That's why, and this is so appropriate to read this about Jesus. You build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape the sentence of hell? Therefore I send you the prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that may come on you all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. The Zechariah that Jesus named here is the Zechariah from the book Zechariah. Not this Zechariah. But the circumstances that he names here is almost exactly the same as how they murdered Zechariah. Here in 2 Chronicles chapter 24, almost the exact circumstance. Almost exactly. They stoned him in the temple here. That's why it's so appropriate. And Jesus says to them, to the Pharisees, he says to them, and this is why it's so appropriate, Jesus says to them, you hypocrites, you won't believe in me, meaning Jesus, and you're going to persecute and murder me. That's what he's actually saying. And look what you've done in the past. Same people murdered the prophets, and now you're going to murder the Son of God. And look what they did here. They murdered the son of Jehoiada. It's so appropriate when Jesus talks to them, because they're going to murder Jesus, the Son of God, and here they're murdering Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada. It's just like a shadow of what they're going to do to Jesus. A shadow. So this kind of like shows what they're going to do to Jesus. Murdered Zechariah, just a shadow of what's going to happen to Jesus. And murdering the prophets here. That's why I put that in there. So back to the story. So here they murdered Zechariah, and he didn't think anything of it. Zechariah is telling them, you've forsaken God, turned away from God, gone back to worshiping idols, after all the kindness that God had shown you. So then, the wrath of God came upon Joash and Judah. That's what happens next. How did the wrath of God come upon Joash and Judah? What happened? Somebody comes down and attacks them, right? Who was it? Who's our favorite guy from Syria? Hazael comes down and attacks the Philistines, and then goes over and attacks Judah. So, who gets injured in this attack? Joash. He gets injured in the attack. Judah and Joash receive wrath from God because they had forsaken God. And how did God execute judgment on Joash for killing Zechariah? What happened to him then? It says specifically that God executed judgment on Joash by what? It says one specific thing, and he gave him judgment by one thing. After he was wounded by the Syrians. Oh, and one thing else we should mention before that. Did a massive force of the army of Syria conquer the Israelites? A small army of Syrians came and defeated Judah. Why? How did that happen? It was because of what? It was because of the wrath of God. God was executing judgment on them because they had forsaken God. So it was the reverse of what usually happens, isn't it? Usually, the Israelites would be able to defeat a much stronger force because God's on their side. But this time the reverse happens. Because they had forsaken God, God takes a small force of Syrians and defeats them. And now, here's Joash, severely wounded in his bed. What happens to him? What's that? So two of his servants go in and murder him. And it says that was God's judgment on him because he had murdered Zechariah, Jehoiada's son, and he had no compassion on Zechariah, Jehoiada's son. Because he showed no kindness to Jehoiada's son, God sent and murdered him through his own servants. It says that was God's judgment on him for that. Okay? And then, why didn't they bury him in the tomb of the kings of Judah? Because he had forsaken God. in the latter part of his years, he forsook God and turned to evil and killed a prophet. So here you have somebody who did good most of his life, but then finished very badly.
You know, it really seems like he was kind of gullible in a lot of ways, because he listened at the beginning of his life for the guy that was telling him to do right, but then as soon as he was gone, he just went ahead and listened to whoever else was coming his way.
That's right. So, look at these scriptures. Psalms 1 and verses 1 and 2 and Proverbs 13 verse 20. Wisdom from God. What was Joash's downfall? How could this happen to us, and how can we prevent it? Joash did good for a lot of years, but then somebody came, flattered him, wanted to be his friend. He listened to that bad advice and went astray. Can that happen to us? Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Good influence, good spouse, good people around us, or bad people around us.
That's right. You got to beware. What does it mean? Let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 12. And this references how the Israelites fell from all the temptations that came upon them, and God said, no, they're going to pay for their sins. And it says, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. What does it teach us about our friends, who we spend time with? Do friends influence our thinking? Do friends influence people's thinking? You bet they do. You bet they do. Okay? How does this demonstrate that the way we finish our life is more important than the way we begin? In 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 24, this is Paul talking about his life. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 24, he says that he has to be careful himself lest he would lose his salvation. He says, let me see if I got this. All right. All things, it says, 23, okay, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek for his own good, but for the good of his neighbor. I don't know if I got that one right.
Is it chapter 9?
Is it 10:21?
I must have got that script.
Is about him buffeting his body.
That's it. That's the one. Where is it?
9:27.
I got the wrong chapter. 9:24. Do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as in beating the air, but I discipline my body to keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself would be disqualified. So it's talking about that there's a reward. You have to finish the race. You have to run so that you'll receive the prize. Okay? So in our lesson, we're talking about finishing well. Did Joash finish well? He lost sight of the prize. We have to remember to never lose sight of the prize, the finish. That's what we're talking about here. And also in Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 14, it talks about the end of life is more important than the beginning. To remember that we have a reward in heaven that's waiting for us. And our time's gone. Sorry, but they're all waiting for us outside. Thank you all for a good class.